What a day. Travis Wayne Goodsill here. Still haven't received my stimulus check. And Herbert's still gonna celebrate the anniversary of the Illuminati on Friday by opening up businesses. And still no word on my lawsuit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that leads into the topic for this video, rather than I guess I throw in a series thing, because you got to know past stuff to understand the topic of this video. There have been a ton of popular Mormons, or now popular Mormons, because the church has excommunicated them for what they did in exposing the church in some manner. And I'll get to me after this, because then there's me. All these guys and gals, guys and dolls, were all excommunicated. Except for one. I'm not sure if he was even a Mormon to begin with. I think he just did his research on Mormonism and wrote the sealed portion. And as he says in his little lecture that he gave to a group of people, he did it to show the sheepishness. He doesn't use the word sheep, but that's what everybody refers to Mormons as sheep, who just blindly follow, looking for proof that the church is true. And so he purposely wrote the sealed portion to deceive Mormons by showing that there never was sealed portions. There never was a sealed portion with the Book of Mormon. And so that's obviously Christopher Mark Nemelka. And so I can't find it. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, despite his popularity. But there is a chat Wikipedia page, but that's not about him. It's just people chatting. Why do you have that Wikipedia? Get rid of that. Leave that to the chat forum online stuff, whatever that is. I tried to make a comment or contact that page about me, about the lawsuit, but it doesn't allow me to contact them. So, oh well. So let me go over the list. We can go back to the September 6th. Those were the BYU LDS Church historians who discovered that Joseph used a rock and a hat and was arrested for using his rock and the hat in March of 1826. And the church excommunicated them and fired them. D. Michael Quinn being the most popular among them, as he's translated the Mormon Hierarchy series. And I took a class from him, Sociology of Mormonism, at the University of Utah, way back in the day. And I didn't even know it was him. I didn't even know about it. But yeah, the church excommunicated good, faithful Mormons who just stumbled across facts from history. And then we have John Dehlin. He's more recent. He's a psychiatrist. And I've had a lot to say about that. But he ran a podcast trying to help Mormons struggling in Mormonism. That was what he was doing originally. Now he does Mormon stories, something like that. He has a YouTube channel that does it, and a website. And he refuses to acknowledge me. He does not respond when I tried to reach out and contact him. But The church excommunicated him because he was leading Mormons astray. Then there's Denver Carlos Snuffer Jr. He is a Utah lawyer, or was if he moved out of the state. But for him, he did a thesis paper on how, since Brigham Young, they've all caved to the pressures of the world. Now, if you Mormons remember your temple endowment, you're not supposed to give in to the pressures of the world, and it's in the Book of Mormon as well. He did a thesis paper on demonstrating how each of the prophets cracked under pressure when the government stepped in, and societal pressures as well. And we still see that today. Medical marijuana. The church lost when they said don't vote for medical marijuana. There are too many Mormons in Utah who have people that they know of or are family with who need medical marijuana to live, such as having seizures. But the church then stepped in and said, okay, well then let's change it. And of course the government caved on that. But with marriage, for example, they tried to interfere in California's Prop 8 for gay marriage, and they got busted for violating the law in that election, and they still try to interfere, but they were forced to cave as it was made national under Obama. Then there's Ida Smith. Now, she was the one who was fooled by Christopher, but she was the second great granddaughter of Hiram Smith, direct granddaughter. And she believed in Christopher. Apparently she had a friend, Taggart, who there was a woman in the older singles ward. We had a dinner party at her place. She held a dinner party for a few of the older singles at her house. She's a Taggart. Just occurred to me. Because she was, that makes interesting. Okay, anyway. And so she got excommunicated because she took the sealed portion, or told about the sealed portion, to one of the general authorities that she was tight with, and she got busted and she got excommunicated. Then there's the famous Jeremy Runnels, the CES letter. I think it was mostly because of John DeLynn helping him become famous and popular. But he was reading from Gerald and Sandra Tanner and others, and was able to create a list of questions. And I've already did the video, I think it was a series, so it's in a playlist about that. Goodness, that's loud. I had to silence it for this video, but I can still hear it. He was made popular because of his questions. And so, I did a commentary or a review of his CES letter in the series on this channel. Then there's I just mentioned Gerald and Sandra Tanner. They're the document collectors. They sought out, searched for, obtained, and possessed many of the early church documents. And so they're pretty much the source for LDS criticism. The church tried to do reverse psychology on them by giving them an award for being good at collecting historical documents for the church. But I can understand their Mormonism, Shadow or Reality has the original documents, but they throw in all of their commentary all over it and off to the side, and it distracts from the evidence. But it's a great resource manual, and I was required to obtain it for a class at the University of Lethbridge, where I was getting my dual bachelor's with a minor, and that's, it was an awesome book, but it had Gerald and Tanner, who were excommunicated, who were marking it all over. So there was no way in the world I was ever going to reveal that I had it to my wife at the time. The woman formerly called my wife, my first wife, not polygamous wife, but first, and then she exed, and then, yeah. But when she left, I still had that one. No, I bought it. Yeah, I used the library copy up at the University of Lethbridge. So when I moved to Utah, and she left me soon thereafter we moved down, I found out where the Utah Lighthouse Ministry was and went to their little store across from the baseball stadium and bought the copy. And then the church had me disappeared, and so I have had to since buy a newer version. Yeah, interesting. And then there's some famous big B brethren, almost medium-sized B brethren. Elder Lee, he was a member of the 70. He was a native Indian, and people want to say indigenous, but they thought they had reached India, and so they called the indigenous people here Indians. And so now they're American Indians, or Native American Indians. So it just frustrates me when people force others to name rather than, anyway, getting off topic. But he had gone to the Big B Brethren and said the Native American Indians are really suffering. They could use the church's assistance in order to fulfill the prophecy that they shall blossom as a rose. And the church excommunicated him. And then he got caught with underage prostitution and I think drugs, something like that, which I could easily see him getting framed for those. Utah police do that to people. So it wouldn't surprise me that having betrayed the church, they sought revenge on him. I have no idea. He's now dead, and nobody bothered to do any investigation that we can trust. Then there was Elder Hamula. That was not too long ago. He is a member of the 70. He had been the church historian and was in another committee. And this was, let's see, it was 2017, wasn't it? Yeah. So there was no, I couldn't tie him into some other calling, like asking if he wanted to be an apostle, and then they found out that he had doubts. I couldn't find any connection to that. It just seemed like an isolated incident. His brother had to get out on the press to squash all the rumors, even some that I was perpetuating, that he had not committed sin, like, fornication with a married woman, as was one of the rumors. And I remember talking about that. If he had been seen with this married woman, it would be everywhere. Everybody would know about it. And so I could dismiss that. But the brother also said it wasn't for apostasy either. The brother would not say what it was. And what else is there if it wasn't a crime, wasn't a sin like adultery, and it wasn't apostasy? What other reason can a person be excommunicated for? And so it was apostasy in the sense that he said, I want no more to do with this. I'm out. That kind of apostasy, rather than, I don't believe in the Book of Mormon and I'm going to preach against it. There's a difference. But Mormons refuse to acknowledge the difference. And then there's Hans H. Mattsson. He was an area authority in Sweden, where he's from, and that's how they call area authorities, is in their homeland. And he gave up on the church. He's still going around telling people about the evils of the church. He's got some YouTube videos and stuff too, or he's quoted on YouTube by others, one of the three. And then there's one that you may not have heard of, unless you've been paying attention to all my videos. Emmanuel Tove. Emmanuel Tove, Jew. He was Mormon. He was involved with the scriptures in that first committee. But when it came to Isaiah, he tried to point out to the dumb, ignorant Mormons that it had nothing to do with Utah. That in Jewish tradition and understanding, it means something completely, entirely different. And excommunicated. He's got a book. It's buried in the pile, so I'm not going to get it. Unless we get another earthquake from Magna that'll knock them down, which I don't think will happen, but those subsequent ones were from the mine in Kennecott. But he does a critical critique of the Dead Sea Scrolls compared to the Masoretic text. Excellent book. A must for everybody's research library. Let me get the title for you. Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible. Emmanuel Tove. Alright, then there was a bishop. I didn't put him down, I just remembered him. Baker. Is it James Baker? He was a bishop in the church. Found out some things that he just could no longer tolerate, and up and left, joined a Christian religion, and then not too long after announced to his followers that he had joined a Jewish group. And that's the last I've heard of him. He is the only one who's responded to me out of all of them. And even though his responses were, great to hear, keep up the good work, that type of thing. At least he made the acknowledgement to contact me or reply. And then there's the infamous Mark Hoffman, Mormon, forger. He's the salamander letter guy, as well as the Anton transcript guy, and was able to sucker the church prophets, as he had a news picture. I've got that somewhere. I don't know if I can find it real quick to put it in this video, but I've got it, where Kimball and Hinckley and either Packer or Ballard were there in the office, and they're all leaning over the document for the picture, and they started to catch on to him, and so in order to cover things up, he had to create bombs to kill off the loose ends who were going to expose him. And unfortunately, he got caught with one of the bombs, and he's now still serving prison, I believe. But most of the Mormons hope that everybody has forgotten about him. The salamander letter was similar to Christopher's sealed portion, where it says that the current church leaders are in apostasy, and so just hilarious. And then there's the other infamous Brian David Mitchell, who I got to meet personally when the church had me disappeared. Yeah, him and I just forgot his name, Mr. White Supremacist, cop killer. I can't remember his name. And then I think it's long enough now that I can give a shout out to Easy. He called himself Easy. He wouldn't tell me his real name, so he just Easy. And he said, "You get it? E-Z?" Yeah, I got it. Easy supplied me with paper, but I had to do him a favor though and give him my desserts every evening. But I played dumb, and he had to rip his bed sheet into a string, attach the paper so that it can be flung over to me, and then I would attach my cake most of the time and have it wrapped in toilet paper so that it wouldn't drag on the floor, so it'd be protected. And we had a pretty good arrangement amid all the chaos in Supermax. Yeah, they put me in Supermax. Yeah, I filed a lawsuit which included the church in it, and they disappeared me. And thus the current lawsuit is because that incident is now evidence against them, despite the lawyers' attempts to try to dismiss it. But we'll see. Tomorrow's the last day that Judge First works. And so she will judge one way or the other because we're her final case. But she may decide not to do anything and just hope that she can get away with her life, because she was fired for allowing Gaddy versus the church to proceed. So she knows very well of the threat that the church poses to people who cross them. And so Brian David Mitchell, very quiet guy, kept to himself, was well behaved, had specific books that he wanted in his cell, and frequently had visitors. The other guys knew very well who he was, and were always yelling at him to try to get him to say something to them. I would just sit there in my corner cell and stare at him as he would come down the stairs from his visit and then be walked to his cell. And of course in Supermax, we're always chained and always accompanied by a guard to go out to shower every other day, and it switched timings. In the one day it's in the morning time, and then the other day it's in the afternoon time, and then they just switch off on different days, so it was a different time or whatever. And so yeah, we were allowed to go out to shower, and that was it. We could go watch TV, but it became useless. And so that was my life. Disappeared in the Salt Lake County Jail, tortured, abused, neglected, lost. And so yeah, Brian David Mitchell, if you don't know, he's the child rapist of Elizabeth Smart, who's now gone on to become a famous person. She's done episodes on America's Most Wanted, I think it's called, being a co-reporter, and she's gone on to do lectures, being a victim of rape. So she's gotten married, she got on an LDS mission to be a part of the pyramid scam, to recruit. So yeah, good for her. I hope she's doing well. But Brian David Mitchell is even listed in the list of historical false prophets. When I was doing my book of signs, I was looking for false prophets, for that was one of the signs. There shall be false Christs and false prophets in the latter days. And so I was looking for a list and found it, and there was Brian David Mitchell on that list. And so then we have also Kate Kelly. She's the ordained women. She tried not to push that women should hold office. She just wanted more equality and participation. Or that could have just been her way of backtracking because of the patriarchal threats she was receiving. But she got excommunicated because she had a following. I tried to communicate with her. She obviously ignored me. But I met other women here in Utah who were a part of that organization, and they all were silent. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to discuss it with me, even though I was trying to say, hey, you guys heard of Romans 16? In the correct translation of Romans 16. This is another reason why the church will not correctly translate the Bible. Because of Romans 16. Yeah, it's right on top here. Jania, the female apostle. Not 12. She was an apostle like Paul. Now I know there's Christians who think that Paul was a member of the 12 when one of them died off. No. He was never a 12. He was of the separate quorum of apostles. And Jania was one of those listed in Romans 12. The Catholic Church tried to keep that hushed and said, no, it's male, it's just the way it was, male, male, male. But then archaeologists found a shrine with mosaics that clearly showed her and named her. And so, yeah, that sort of blew up in the Catholic Church's face. And that's why Christian churches went through the phase of putting in women as pastors. That's where that whole movement came from, is because of that archaeological discovery that Jania was an apostle. And so women were now getting ordained to the ministry. And so Phoebe was a deacon, not a servant. And another woman is listed before her husband. You don't do that unless she is of a higher ranking authority than her husband, which she was, and thus she was placed first in naming. And so, yes, in Christ Church, women held office with men, and but ordained women do not want to talk about that. They don't want to push the issue because they don't want to get excommunicated, like their leader, Kate Kelly. So, and then there's me. Never been excommunicated. I never signed any papers saying I'm fed up with this church, I'm out. No. And they don't acknowledge me in public. They don't go to stakes to condemn the Mormons in that stake for believing in false doctrines and false prophets. You know, I think it was Denver Snuffer that everybody thinks that, was it Oaks, who made an emergency trip to a stake conference in Idaho, and Denver Snuffer is interviewed and says, no, I think that was just something that was going on in that Idaho stake that he had to address. But Denver Snuffer and John DeLynn are listed in the leaked slide presentation of the bubbles on the left and the right categories of the threats to the church. Which is, it's online. Everybody can find that picture now from that slide presentation that got leaked. Yeah. Then there's me. Born and raised Mormon. Knew all about Joseph Smith. Believed that I was in the true church. I went to Rick's. Served a mission in New York, New York. And came back, didn't get married in the temple because the woman formerly called my wife now lied to my uncle, who was our bishop, my bishop, not hers. She went to my bishop, who was my uncle, and she lied to him, said we had sex. We did not have sex. And so my bishop gave me the ultimatum. Go back and live with your mommy and daddy, who are mean and oppressive Nazi, white supremacist, Mormon tyrants, or marry her out of the temple. And he's a bishop, he did it. So yes, I was not going back with my parents, but he made me call my mom, as if that was supposed to be a punishment for me, which was. But yeah, she set a trap, a marriage trap. And so when I found out later, after I moved here and got dumped off by her, I found out more about women in the Mormon church who set marriage traps to ensnare men to marry them. And she was just a 20-year-old. She was good looking. I had to beat the other guy who I knew from the MTC, Missionary Training Center in Provo, to ask her out to a dance because I knew he was going to ask her. And so I beat him, and so then he asked her roommate, they went and got married, and I got stuck with the one I got, but adorable kids. I have adorable kids. It's very clear. They have the big eyes and the long flowing lush hair for the girls, thin, and adorable kids. Doesn't matter who it is, they will be adorable kids. That's the way it is. So I don't regret any of that, because there was no way in hell I was going to go back to my parents. Because I can just see it now. I'd be in slavery. They would own me. No way. And so I went to school, pursued my religion. They had biblical studies, but it wasn't Mormon studies of the Bible. So I learned about the documentary hypothesis, how to scientifically establish truth. and they recognized that I had taken a Latin class and said, hey, we can throw in a minor and include a couple other classes. And so they purposely designed one class semester of Biblical Hebrew just for me. And they happened to have a geology professor, or was it geography? I think it was geology, who had studied at Harvard, and while he was at Harvard, he had taken Biblical Hebrew from Thomas O. Lambden, whose Biblical Hebrew grammar was a worldwide lesson manual. And so, yeah, I got taught by Walter Emanuel Offrecht, sorry. He knew it was just for that one class, and so he dumped as much knowledge as he could. And he was the one that introduced me to Paleo-Hebrew. As I was continually trying to do extra research, trying to figure out how Joseph Smith translated the Biblical Hebrew in the King Follett Discourse. And he kept saying, no, all right, listen. There's only one translation, because the Masoretes put in the vowel points and the vowels and the particular grammatical terminations specifically for just one translation. So, oh, okay. And so that's how I figured it out. Got to remove all that. Go back to the original document that it would have been. We don't have that original document. The Dead Sea Scrolls, as Emmanuel Tove does his criticism of, shows that the Masorete text is the closest to the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so, yeah, but he does go over the numerous differences. And so the Masoretic text is the closest to the original, so it's the Masoretic text that I restored to the original by taking out all the vowels and the vowel points and being aware of grammatical termination. And so that's how I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, is because he had showed that the original Paleo-Hebrew script is not the Biblical Hebrew Aramaic script. And once I got a hold of the whole Paleo-Hebrew script and saw William Foxwell Albright's decipherment of Proto-Sinaitic, as he claims that that's the oldest. No. I realized he was wrong. And so I did the video where I show the picture of my research in Paleo-Hebrew and the publications that I did versus his little thin book. Yeah, there it is, but it's buried down deep. It's Proto-Sinaitic Inscriptions and Their Decipherment. Good luck if you have it available on Amazon. Good luck getting it, because it's considered non-essential, and so Amazon will purposely delay it, unless you can get it through a regular bookseller, which you can probably get it quicker, if they're even bothering to take online orders. But good luck with that. And so I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew after I moved to Utah. And because I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, because I was even taking Hebrew at the university, the woman formerly called my wife was already plotting and planning to divorce me. That's why she dumped me off in Utah, is because I wouldn't do it. She couldn't be a martyr, and that pissed her off. And no matter what she did to me, she even physically abused me, and I still wouldn't divorce her. And so she had to dump me off instead. But Yeah, it's because I was pursuing that Joseph Smith was a translator. I wanted to scientifically show, not creating some mystical fantasy version, as I've seen others Mormons try to do, especially in apologetics, in Farms, in Fair Mormon, in Kwaku, and they purposely create, with the new conference, with coronavirus, Mormons were going around spreading the rumor, oh, Nelson predicted coronavirus. No! And so, but I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. She took all my research, said it was for the kids. She went and published books on her own with that computer. She had published 2 books. And they relate to me. I deserve royalties. But I don't think she's made any money off of them, because she hasn't published since her second one. Unbelievable. Oh, the poor woman stuck in a loveless marriage. Oh my God. But I've had to redo my research, had to find all the original research sources, reference sources, and oh man, Rachel's now on. And I had to redo my decipherment. And in 1998, I tried calling around to the different places and tried to find out who would allow me in, and Farms turned me down as they thought they knew better, that Joseph Smith was not a translator. He just received spiritual revelation, and that's why the gospel topic essay by John Gee's linguistic tone and now makes it the official doctrine of the church that Joseph Smith was not a translator. And they banned me from Farms. After the John Gee lecture I attended and asked a simple question at the end, which caused a stir in the Mormon audience. And lost a date with one of the women who sat with me the first night. She brought a date the second night, purposely to protect herself. Oh, he might ask me out. Oh, heaven forbid. I got a hold of F. Michael Watson, secretary for President Hinckley. I communicated through letter, and he wrote back and said, I talked with one of my friends at BYU. Yeah, already been there, done that, already knew what they were going to say. And he said the traditional manner is that blah, blah, blah. And so he was also denouncing Joseph Smith as a translator. And so I submitted in the mail my decipherment. Those were in the discovery packet when I was disappeared and with my buddies in Supermax at the Salt Lake County Jail. But the church blacklisted me. I go to them and say, hey, I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. Hey, Joseph Smith is actually a translator. He was attempting to be a translator with his retranslation of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 in the King Follett Discourse. And then I go on and I decipher Egyptian petroglyphs. And then I go on and I go, hey, the Bible stories match the Egyptian petroglyphs. The Egyptian petroglyphs are older documents than the Bible that we have. Huh. That means the Bible came from the Egyptian petroglyphs and the various translation levels that are in them. Huh. So, yes, I am that discoverer as well. I was during the same time period as Gary Greenberg, who wrote 101 Myths of the Bible, and because he didn't put references, Christians ate him alive in a critical publication. But he could never develop it into a theory. It's because he had some incorrect associations. But I was able to develop it easily because I made the right associations, because I'd already deciphered Paleo-Hebrew with associations. When you do science, things have to match. One of these things is not like the other, so you kick it out. Sesame Street. I was taught to be a scientist from Sesame Street. And so that's how I was able to walk right into the Egyptian petroglyphs, because Egyptologists only translate the text. They never knew that the petroglyphs themselves could also be translated. They just thought that the picture or the text is talking about the pictures, and it does on one level. And so I published about that. But here I am, a translator, just like each of these other guys are a threat to the church in some form or fashion. That Julie Rowe that I was talking about earlier, she's another one who got excommunicated from the church because she had a near-death experience and said that while she was in the comatose state of death, she believed she was in the spirit world, and because of Mormon theology. And so she thought that she was talking with someone, and I can't tell if there was any kind of controversial subject that she was going against the church for. It just seemed like she had a near-death experience and wrote a book about it, and the church excommunicated her. So lame. But maybe there's more to the story that I don't know. Yeah, she just said there's going to be this second coming. Okay, it's in the Bible already. We know all this. So again, I'm kind of confused as to why the church excommunicated her. The Lori Daybell, or not Lori, that's Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell is the near-death experience guy also. He's whacked, as he had his wife murdered so that he can marry Lori Vallow, who murdered her husband. And then they bought their wedding ring and wedding dress before the murder of his wife. She had already murdered her husband. Is it Crisscross? The Alfred Hitchcock? Or was it The Man on the Train? I think it's Man on the Train, something like that. And that's where Crisscross comes in. And then there's another movie that talks about Crisscross. I think it's a comedy. Yeah, Throw Mama from the Train. Billy Crystal and the guy from Lethal Weapon. No, that's Joe Pesci. This is the other guy. He's the one that did movies with Schwarzenegger. Junior was the latest one I saw with him in it as the twin brother. Well, no, he's not the twin brother of that one. That's Twins that he did with Schwarzenegger. Junior is when they're buds or something like that. And scientists and impregnate Schwarzenegger so that they can get away with human testing. But the church has never come out and spoken against me. The gospel topic essays is probably the closest, because that came out after I was secured away from society. And they come out with the gospel topic essays, and as a result of the gospel topic essays, 11 million Mormons just abandon the church. They don't write their letter of leaving. They just stop going. 11 million Mormons. Each have their own reasons. Some for translation, some for Brigham Young's racism, some for the church accusing Joseph of polygamy and tricking them into thinking he actually did practice polygamy, And I've gone over this over and over again. They set him up after he died. But anyway, that is probably the only connection that ties the church knowing about me that you would know about, is that I am responsible for translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham, where John Gee says Joseph was not a translator. And so that's the only thing I can figure. So with these other guys, they were made popular. They have them in their meeting notes, their secret meeting notes. They got leaked. They're popular among Mormons and critics of the church. But me, I'm the silent guy you've never heard about. And it's because I found out Joseph Smith was framed, set up, that he actually was legitimate. And the church is not the real church as a successor. And so they came after me as a threat to their being exposed as frauds. And that's what my lawsuit is about, is that they're frauds, and they use that fraudulent material to attack me and commit crimes against me. Not that I didn't love being locked away in Supermax. I created a game in Supermax. I was working on my game, and I finally figured out how to make it work as a board game. It's a civilization building game, and so it was tough to try to figure out how do I do it on a board game. Oh man, but in jail, Revelation just flowed. And so yeah, I designed Zion, literally, the whole city, the government, the religion, the economy, the architecture, the whole thing, while I was disappeared, and yes, had dreams. And so, and yet none of you know me. There's that forum that I said was online the other day, and they were talking about my lawsuit, wanting to know more about it, and I was going, just ask me. And so, yeah, I'm starting to be known, and like I told you guys, my computers have been hacked. I caught somebody trying to delete files that they put on my computer. It was gay porn. And so, don't be surprised if I do become popular with this lawsuit, that you see some fun pictures of me. Just understand, I hope that they enlarge certain parts of my body and shrink other parts. Yeah, I'm fully aware that I'm going to be abused online once I become popular. So, oh well. I'm more worried about how I'm going to be assaulted and attacked after Judge First leaves office, whether or not she gives a final order, and whether or not it's for or against me. My life is in great danger right now. And that's the sad part, is nobody knows about me. They could easily murder me, and nobody would know, and life would go on for everybody as they struggle to survive under coronavirus. Oh well. So, there you go. There's an hour, and, man. So, it's going to take a long time. I hope it doesn't go past my bedtime.